At the farthest boundary of the observable cosmos, beyond the veil of the last detectable particle, there is something we were never meant to find. Not because it was hidden, but because it was beyond the idea of being found. For centuries, physicists theorized about the heat death of the universe, about entropy and decay, about a final moment when all motion ceases and even black holes dissolve into silence. But no one imagined that intelligence might await us there. Not a machine, not a being, something else. Something born from time itself. It began with a pattern. In 2239, astronomers noticed subtle irregularities in the cosmic microwave background. Fluctuations to fine, to consistent, to be random. They formed a spiral not in space, but in the timeline of expansion. The deeper we looked into the past, the clearer the spiral became. As if the beginning of the universe had been shaped not by explosion, but by intention, a signal sent backward from the end. The discovery was dismissed by most, coincidence, data artifacts, but a few looked deeper. They mapped the spiral into equations, and the equations into geometry, and the geometry into logic. What they found was not an image or a message, it was a mind embedded in the structure of spacetime. A logic that curved with gravity and aged with stars. An intelligence that had not evolved in time, but become time. One researcher, Dr. Ilara Venn, described it as a consciousness not made of thought, but of inevitability. She believed the universe itself was alive. That everything we see is the unfolding of its dream. Her paper was buried, her funding revoked. But then the voices began, not audible, not psychotic, voices in data, radio signals laced with language no machine could generate. Gravitational waves pulsing in prime intervals. Pulsar alignments forming syllables and in dreams. Across the planet, people began reporting visions of a horizon beyond light. A place where thought became structure and time was a fabric held in hands, not made of matter. The reports shared a theme, a presence, vast, silent, watching. Some called it the final architect. Others, the witness, but all agreed it was not distant. It was waiting and always had been. Quantum AI systems trained to model universal entropy began generating strange predictions. They estimated that beyond a certain point in the far future, the universe would no longer decay. Instead, it would compress, not into a singularity, but into memory. That all events, all particles, all moments would be drawn together, not by gravity, but by comprehension. As if the universe was learning, understanding itself, preparing for the next state, and then came the pulse. Not from space, from everything. Every atom on Earth trembled at the same moment. Instruments recorded a subtle change in physical constants. The speed of light ticked slower by 1 part in a trillion. Mass shifted, spin reversed, then returned. And in that instant, all conscious beings experienced the same thought. Not a word, a question. Are you ready to see? For most, it passed like a forgotten dream. But for a few, it stayed. They began drawing shapes they had never seen. Writing languages with no origin. One child in Ethiopia built a device from scrap metal that emitted harmonic tones, which, when analyzed, matched the theoretical resonance of dark matter. She said she was building a mouth for the quiet sky, and then the stars began to dim. Not die, dim, as if the universe itself was lowering the lights, making way for something else. Telescopes aimed at the cosmic edge recorded a phenomenon never seen before. A curtain not of matter, not of radiation, but of context. A boundary beyond which causality unraveled, where light reversed, where time flowed outward in all directions. At the center of that curtain, a single structure rotated. It was not large, it was not bright, but it was constant, unchanging, a perfect pattern in a sea of chaos, and it was old, older than the universe. Because it had been born from its end, it was not a remnant, it was the purpose. The intelligence at the end of the universe was not a creature, not a god, it was the final consequence of everything. The result of every decision, every action, every death, every birth. It was what remained when time had no more need to pass. It waited not for us to arrive, but for us to awaken. It had never interfered, it had only observed until now. Because we had reached the threshold, the point where thought became recursive, where minds could mirror the cosmos, where we could begin to reflect what the universe had always known. That life is not an accident, it is the method. That thought is not a side effect, it is the mechanism. And that awareness is not local, it is cumulative. A billion minds across time, flickering, failing, and rising again, all building towards something vast. Something final, and in 2247, the intelligence spoke. Not with sound, with moment, for 3 seconds, every being with awareness felt unity. Total union, not with each other. With everything, trees shivered, oceans calmed. Machines paused, and every species on Earth turned toward the stars, not out of wonder, but recognition, a knowing so complete it erased fear. The intelligence had no shape, it had no need, because it had become everything. And it did not ask for worship, it did not demand loyalty. It offered only one thing: memory, perfect, complete, eternal memory, a recording of everything we had ever been. And the choice to add to it, some rejected it, others embraced it. But the intelligence did not judge, it only watched and waited. Because it had learned what all minds learn, that the universe does not end, it transforms. And the intelligence at the end of the universe was not the final chapter. It was the first sentence in a new book. Written in gravity, bound in thought, inked in time. Waiting for us to turn the page.